When life is messy, more often than not, one of the main contributing factors uh, that is honestly one of the most deadliest is that of anger. And to be honest, and if we're honest with ourselves, this really touches all of our lives in some way, form, or fashion. Full disclosure, I will be referencing some notes today for two reasons. One is to keep us on track, and number two is to make sure that I will be referencing correctly some of the Bible verses that I will be utilizing today. And the question here is, how should Christians handle anger issues? This is, like I said, near and dear to all of our lives. And let's just go ahead and jump right in. Christians are encouraged to handle anger in ways that reflect Christ's teachings and character. Here's a biblically grounded and practical approach to dealing with anger issues. Today, we are going to be as relevantly and as quickly as possible, but also effectively as possible, going over 7 practical action steps to responding and handling this emotion, this life engaging, life altering topic here. So without further ado, let's get started. The first thing that is the most appropriate is to really acknowledge the anger honestly. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26 says this: "Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger." You know, one of my mentors in the past few years, he put it this way, referencing scripture. You know, it would have been so much easier if the Bible just said, "Don't sin." And when you think about it, he's right. It would make it so much easier if the Bible just said, "Hey, just don't sin at all." Okay, that's clear enough. Let's let that be our aim. But the problem is, and this is where it gets kind of muddy, if you will, it doesn't say that. As Ephesians 4 just said, it says, go ahead and be angry, but just don't sin. And in fact, we have in other passages references to Christ himself exercising his anger, as we know that he was divinely and fully God, but also he was fully man. And as humans, that is part of our DNA. And so he exercised that emotion, but in a righteous way. You see, anger itself isn't inherently sinful. It's what we do with it that matters. Acknowledge it without shame, but also be responsible with it. The second thing that we need to really engage with today is, as believers, a big part of our lives is in interacting with God is seek God in prayer. Bring anger before God in prayer. Now, on the first glance, that might seem a little strange because, this is my raw passions, my raw emotions, and shouldn't I clean my act up before I approach God with all my raw anger? You see, that's the beautiful thing, because when you think about it in terms of world religions, most every other world religion is a bottom top model. In other words, hey, you got to clean your act up first, and then you can approach the higher power. Whereas Christianity is the only religion in which it is the model that is top down. In other words, Christ, we know from Ephesians Philippians chapter 2, if you go check that out later, that Christ emptied himself and dwelt among us in flesh, taking fleshly form as a human. All right, let's keep us going here. There's no shame in asking for help. In fact, we are encouraged to ask for help in understanding the root cause and for strength to respond with love and patience. The third thing that we are encouraged to interact with and really face is, let's just go ahead and examine the source. You see, in your anger, coming from hurt, injustice, pride, unmet expectations, or fear. You see, these are the handful of sources that, if you really think about it, the majority of all of our anger has its root, its cause, and its source. So take a few minutes to really examine yourself and, okay, where is this coming from? I love what James chapter 1, verse 19 through 20 says. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. The next thing that we are really to look at here is practice forgiveness. Now, I know, believe me, I know that this is easier said than done by a long shot. Believe me, I know. But nonetheless, it is an absolute necessity, even for especially I'm included in this category myself. You see, Jesus himself emphasized forgiveness repeatedly in the Gospels. If you want to check that out yourself later, I would encourage you to look specifically at Matthew 6, 14 through 15. But let's consider this, the importance of letting go of grudges, even when justified, frees your heart from bitterness and opens the way for peace. Our next area that we need to tackle is pursue reconciliation when possible. Now, I know that in some cases, it's not up to you. It's a two-way street in a lot of scenarios. And I realize that if you're reaching out and that other party, the second party, is not responding appropriately, you're not able to interact or control other people's responses. So make sure that we keep that in mind as well. But pursue reconciliation when possible. Again, referencing Matthew chapter 5, verse 23 through 24, instructs believers to reconcile with others before offering their gifts at the altar, implying what? Implying that God values relationships and peace. Here's an important one. Let's just go ahead and set boundaries if needed. What does that mean? Well, being Christian doesn't mean being passive or enabling abuse either. You know, sometimes walking in love means saying no, stepping away, or seeking counsel or protection. Now, for those of you who may have the thoughts along these lines, like I have in the previous years in the past, man, counseling is that's a sign of weakness. I don't want to go to a shrink or anything along those lines, rub some dirt on it. I can handle it like myself, like a man. Well, let me just go ahead and address that really quickly. That is a false line of thinking that is even more deadly. Put your pride aside and seek counsel, and make sure that in seeking help, we are rooting ourselves in our own source of authority outside of ourself. Here's what I mean. So for me personally, my source of authority outside of myself is the scripture, the Bible. Because I know that I am not strong enough to handle my problems and my issues all by myself. So truth, and we may devote a whole another episode to truth, but truth is essential for grounding ourselves and having a foundation to stand upon for all aspects of our life. And so for that purpose and for that reason, we can have no shame in seeking out counseling when needed and appropriate. And the last thing we are to look at here is the importance of using practical tools. And this is where this idea, you may have heard this concept or these classes, anger management, things of that nature. So anger management techniques such as deep breathing, journaling, counseling, as previously mentioned, or talking with a trusted mentor, obviously all those things can help. Seeking Christian counseling or pastoral guidance is wise when anger is overwhelming and persistent. So, just to review, because I know that was a lot, let's just go over 7 practical action steps that we can take and hopefully utilize to answer this question of how should Christians handle anger issues. And I'll just throw this disclaimer in as well. This can apply for people of any background, not just Christians. These practical tools can be useful for everyone, regardless of your faith background or lack thereof. Again, the 7 action steps. 1, acknowledge the anger honestly. Number 2, seek God in prayer. 3, examine the source. Where is that anger coming from? Where's that root cause? Number 4, practice forgiveness. Probably the hardest thing on this list. I realize that. I'm right there with you. Number 5, pursue reconciliation when possible. Sometimes it's not up to you. I realize that. Number 6, set boundaries if needed. And 7, and lastly, use practical tools. Hey, if this content is helpful for you, if you want to hear more content along these lines, man, I would love for you to drop a comment in the comment box below. If, of course, I already have some things in the pipeline, but if there are some content that you want some interaction with, to utilize as a resource, please, I encourage you to drop that comment in the comment box below. And again, if you love this content, if this is helpful for you, please, I would encourage you to take 2 seconds and in the comment section below to just one, like, and two, hit that subscribe button. See you in the next video.